Good day, students. My name is Kashkola Abna. Today we are going to look at the subject called business literacy. My name is Kashkola Abna. I have a bachelor degree in marketing from Polytech. Currently, I'm doing my MBA in international business. If you would like to know more information about you and to call me, you can call me 0813-306-443 or email me at yourtutorabna@gmail.com. The content of this presentation today, we are going to look at three contents: communication theory, the principle of effective communication, working with numbers, and binary with decimal systems. That content encompasses of 5 chapters. Module 1 or chapter 1 is the key principle of effective business communication. The importance of effectiveness communication in the workplace, whether they ensure speed and accuracy. If there is effective communication in working environments, so there will be a speed and accuracy because everybody know what to do. It fosters, maintain, and develop relationship between stakeholders. When I talk about stakeholder, I talk about people who have direct interest in a business. That can be employees, the public, the management, like the shareholder, etc. Effective communications, it also motivate, empower, and consulting the employees, meaning that if people have proper communication effective, people are empowered, people are self-starters, and they are driving to do anything as possible because information is already available and the communication is quite important. For marketing purposes, let me say, if there is information in working organizations or staff or client follow idea to use a service or a product because information is well disseminated via the communication, it also promotes self-interest. If you have a question about this topic, don't be worried about it. Just drop me an email to your tutorabna@gmail.com. Now we are looking at the process of communication or the communication process according to other educations people. The called Russell model communication process is summarized to the followings. There is a center. A center is a person who initiates the process or the person who starts the communications. And we have the encoding. Encoding is by transferring the thoughts in a code of words, sound, etc., which a receiver can appreciate or understand. And there's also a message. A message is information communicated or passed on, where the receiver is also a respondent, a destination, or an audience. This is the person who received the message. Encoding. Encoding is the interpretation of the process, how the communication is being encoded into a meaningful way. We have channel or medium of communication. This is how the message was sent from the sender to the receiver. And of course, there's a feedback, reactions, or the response. This is the message from the receiver back to the center. But of course, there's also some barriers of communication, or we call them noises or interference. These are the obstacles in the process of communication that can hold back the interpretation of the message. Categories of communications. We have some different categories of communication known as interpersonal communication, then intrapersonal communication, and extrapersonal communication. The intrapersonal communication is internal, is oneself communication before we express them over to anyone. Let me say, for example, you want to give a reason. Before you portray the reason to your lecturer or to your tutor, you think about it personally, internally, search yourself before you pass it on. That's what we call intrapersonal communication. And of course, we also what we call interpersonal communication. This is the communication between two or more people. Example, a tutor and students. So this is always one person in a public or one by one or in a large group of people giving some sort of information. And we have extrapersonal communication. Is a communication between a person and the animal, a plant or an object. Therefore, sender does not expect a verbal response. Example, you hit your study guide and shout to it, "I don't understand." Or you hit your telephone that is not working. Because you do not expect a telephone or a cell phone to respond back to you because, of course, it's an object. Those are what we call extrapersonal communication, because you are talking to a non-living organization, for example. Mass communication, of course, is a communication between a center and a large interpersonal audience who do not know each other. For example, a mass medias are TV, radio, etc. In mass communication, some message can be interpreted differently by each individual, because the way you perceive or the way you apprehend the communication is not necessarily the way I present it. So the interpretation will be different according from one person to another person as far as the perceptive and interpretation is concerned. We have verbal and non-verbal communication, of course. We have verbal communication, we have spoken communication, written communication. And of course, non-verbal communication, we have visual, like facial expression, posture, the way your body is, a gesture, the more maybe you point to someone. Proxemics is the distance between people, graphics, color, and dress. Those are the non-verbal communication, because sometimes if you draw something red, people interpret differently. That's why it's a non-verbal communication. Sound, we have paralinguistics, like the word, like if you say, oh, those are the words we call them paralinguistics. We have feelers, music, silence, and touch. We have types of verbal communications. We have spoken or oral or written. Spoken communication can be a face-to-face over a telephone or a public address, example, meeting, interview, or training. Written communication can be either directed to individual or the general public, example, business letter, report, faxes, memo, email, etc. An example of written communication for a general public are press releases, advertisement, and annual reports. Those are the general public's written communications. We have three categories of non-verbal communications, to mention few: visual, auditory or sound, and also touch. The visual refer to a facial expression like a gesture or a posture. Example, a frown can indicate unhappiness or a lack of understanding. If you frown on your face like this, sometimes you portray a lot of messages, you portray a lot of communications. And we have a sound, refer to the sound of your voice. Make such a pitch. How low or how high is your voice? Sound like also send out messages. These are called paralinguistics. Touch. The manner and how people touch each other is called tactile non-verbal communication. Example, just a pat on a back can indicate motivation. Barrier to effective communication, ladies and gentlemen, students, these barriers to effective communication are self-explanatory in your study guide or in your textbook. So I would like you to consult your study book, because I don't want to spoon feed you, so you have to go through it and look at it and get more definition on those psychological, physiological, psychological, perceptual, semantic, and intercultural. You revert back to me if you don't understand, I can assist you. Two most important aspects in spoken communication are voice and language. And according to thedictionary.com, define language as a system used for communication using samples, rules, called grammar. So by using those rules that are called grammar, also define what we call language is. Spoken communication defined as the human language, which words are spoken through the mouth. Those are the spoken communication. And the language has various functions, namely providing information, expressing emotions, influencing others, pressure, etc. Techniques to improve voice. The aspects need to be controlled when using the voice. You can also look on page 29 for this matter, because talking about pitch, how low or high your voice is, it's very important also to control, also to look at the pitch of your voice, because it might not be too high or too low, but of course average. Volume, how loud or how soft your voice is. You know, some people are too soft and some people are too loud. So it's need also to adjust your volume accordingly so that people could really understand your voice properly. We have a tone. The tone is the quality or a character of your voice, can indicate your attitude. The moment you sound to a person, the moment you approach a person by your tone, the person can really find who are you, your attitude, and your mood at that certain point of time, because of your tone will change dramatically. Talking about rate or tempo, how quickly or slowly you can speak is not necessarily or not bad to speak so fast, but of course you have to look at your tempo and rate of your voice. Breath control, the regulation of into and out of your lungs. It's very also important when you are speaking, at least to give yourself a breath, so that when you are breathing, it might interpret the way you talk, or you speak like someone is tired. So those are the techniques to improve the voice. Articulations is the process of making sound, syllables, and word with your tongue, lips, teeth, etc. So the moment you are talking, also your tongue or teeth has an influence on your word that you are trying to say out. Projection. Projection is the way of throwing the voice to listener is, the way you are throwing your voice to listeners is what we call projection. And it's very, very also important to look at how you throw your words to the listeners, especially when you are throwing your words to the students like me down here. Pronunciation is the way in which words are formed or a language is spoken. For example, the way you pronounce, some people they say it's a bad, some people it's bad. So it's also sort of pronunciations, which is also very important. Relaxations are techniques used to control the breathing, pitch, rate, and projection. So there should be some sort of relaxations when you are talking so that you can improve your voice. Direct and indirect spoken communication. Direct communication occur in face-to-face situation, can consist of one person, small or large group, can take place in a formal or informal communication or environment. It can be one-way communication, speaker and audience, but no feedback. You know what? A direct communication is just one-way communications whereby there's no a response from the audience. So there's no feedback in direct communication. Indirect communication is speaking to one or another people or a group of people via an electronic means like telephone and cell phone. You are calling your friends or your brother via telephone. That is indirect communication because you are using the means of electronics. Types of spoken communication. We have different types of spoken communication with informal group discussions, giving instructions or directions, explaining or solving problem like me now I'm trying to explain subject to you. It's a spoken communication. Interview. And you should also start to note that in interview there are some questions, types of questions to be asked. We have open-ended questions that ask like what, how, and why. Like how did you go about that? Those are the open-ended questions. Closed questions can be answered with yes or no. For example, can you drive? Or do you know how to swim? You can yes, I know how to swim. No, I don't know how to swim. Yes, I can drive. No, I cannot drive. And also specific questions are limited to one correct answer. Which year did you finish school? Maybe 1994, 2007. Because they are specific limited only to one answer. Which year? Here the concept is just the center of interest is just the year in which a person has completed his school. Leading questions asked by interview to read the interview to the answer. And also we have a hypothetical question, put the interview in an imagined scenario. For example, what changes can you make if you are hired? If you be part of our group, what changes can you make? So I'm trying to put in a scenario where you can imagine it and find out what are the changes you might bring in if you happen to be one of the candidates as part of our group. Some question can be like that. Further reading. Ladies and gentlemen, students, I would love you to look in your textbook and do self-reading on page 38 to 46. We are talking about meeting terminologies, duty of various office bearers, the power of chairperson, secretary, presentation, customer interaction, including direct marketing, speaking on telephone and cell phone. Do that, please, and come back to me for information and questions. We are in a module 3 now. Still, we have 2 modules to go, ladies and gentlemen. Written communications is our module 3. Definition. Written communication is the recording of creation of information through the written language or transfer of meaning from writer to the reader. Like verbal communication discussed in module 2, written communication also enters the communication process. In written communication, there's also a communication process, just the same as in verbal communication. We have a sender who is a writer now in written communication, sent a written message via a written channel to the receiver of audience who are the readers now, and who reads it and gives a feedback. You know, they are center here, who's the reader. We have a medium of communication, like a written message. We have a channel, like a written channel. And we have also the receiver and audience, who are the reader now in this aspect, and also people who give feedback, or for people who are reading. But don't forget that there's also a noise or a barrier to written communication, like unfamiliar language. Let me say, I'm trying to communicate to you in a written format. I'm writing Portuguese or French, but you don't understand. That would be a barrier to communication. Unclear or complicated words. I think about maybe jaw-breaking words, jargons, or some words that are quite complicated, who a person cannot understand. The attitude of the reader and the reader. If our attitude of the person's writings on the reader are not at the same page, of course, the communication in written format might not be necessarily understandable, and the receiver might not be able to read. Sometimes a person might not read what you're writing. So those are the barrier to written communications, ladies and gentlemen. Readings. You must note that reading, one cannot define writing without understanding the concept of reading. Therefore, reading involves being able to decode a written message, also involves learning vocabulary, spelling, grammar, and organized language. We have ways of reading. We have scanning, skimming, and comprehensive reading. Scanning is rapid reading through and looking for a specific word for effect without interested in the meaning. You know, you're just reading, you're just going through something for a specific word without really interested in the meaning. Scanning in a newspaper, for example, you're just scanning the newspaper just for a certain position or a vacancy I'm looking for, you know. Skimming also is a rapid, but the reader want to get a general idea of what he's written. Let me say, for example, I want to understand about a topic on a report, about a report itself, let me say. I want to get a clue about a report, so you skim the the title of the report and the heading, with the main heading and a paragraph. From there, you just want to know the general idea of the report, not necessarily looking for certain words or something. We have also a comprehensive reading, carefully reading to understand the meaning. You know, you are just in a comprehensive reading, it's quite very, very important. These are applied in examination. For example, you are studying for an exam, so you have to go for a comprehensive reading so that you can master and understand each and every nitty-gritty and aspect of that questions or a book, so that you can, of course, make it in your exam. It's also continue. Written communication can also be direct or indirect. In writing communication, there's also a direct writing communications and also an indirect writing communications. Personal. Direct communication can be personal, one-on-one link between writer and the reader. There is a direct feedback, e.g. letter, examples are letter, faxes, and memo, etc. Indirect communication, targeting large impersonal audiences. You know, it's tagged, let me say, it's part of a mass communications via the radio or televisions, but there's no direct feedback on a mass media like press release or advertisement. Kindly do further reading from page 54 to 96. Feel free to ask questions where you don't understand. That page consists of types of written communication used in business and also the curriculum vitae. How can you set up your curriculum vitae, of course, which is the CV, or you can call it the resume. Module 4. Work readiness. The aim of this module is to get you ready for work by discussing, not for work, but for work, by discovering or discussing yourself, time, team, and conflict management. Work readiness is being prepared for the work environment. It means knowing where you fit in organization and what is expected of you. You know, work readiness is like you should be ready for work, right? You should know yourself. You must understand yourself. You must know where are you and where you can fit in a certain organization and what an organization expects of you or from you. It's very vital to know yourself. You know? It's very important to know yourself. You must know yourself. Are you a go-getter? Are you a perseverant? Are you a self-starter? Maybe are you able to swim with sharks? Are you motivated and well-inspired? You know, understanding your relationship with your team members. You must also understand who you are. Who are you with your team? You know, how do you relate or how do you correlate to your team member? For example, are you throwing with your team member, or sometimes not in the same track with them? And also understand the organizations as well as the external environment. The organization, you should understand your whole and your entire organization, for example, your company you work for, and also external environment, looking at the economics, we're talking about supply and demand, etc. On page 100 in the textbook, there is a visual illustration of the key principle of effective business communication. Ladies and gentlemen, look at that visual illustration, look at it, and of course, come back to me if you would like more clarity and also to emphasize more on that. Self-management and self-knowledge. Self-management in workplace involve thinking through method and technique to be in charge of oneself. Self-management now is when now trying to know who are you, how do I self-manage myself. This includes things like to gain self-knowledge. When you are trying to manage yourself, you want to get self-knowledge. You want to set up goals for development and time management. I also trying to tell you that look on page 101 to 107, where there's also the Maslow hierarchy of needs, like needs actualization, esteem needs. Come back to me, I'll quantify more on that. Self-knowledge is a skill of being aware of and understand oneself. Self-knowledge is the skill whereby you do understand yourself completely, because the knowledge is to know about yourself here. It's first step toward effective relationship building in a commercial setup. Of course, before you do anything, before you enter commercial setup environment, able to know yourself. Self-knowledge is very important. Know who you are, what you like, etc. and so on. Have a healthy self-image. Knowing your characteristic and what motivates you, a step to self-discovery. The moment now you have a self-knowledge, of course now your self-knowledge, it leads you to a self-discovery where you discover yourself from A to Z. Stages in group of development. There's a professor called Dr. Drew Took developed the formatting, storming, norming, performing, a model to explain team development and behavior. He later added the fifth stage, what we call adjourning. Forming. In a forming is a first stage. Team is dependent on a leader to guide, direct, and set norm and assist in developing versions. Forming is whereby it's a first stage in a group whereby all the group members, they only depend on the leader for the directions, for the guidance, and also to the sort of rules and norms and regulations. Storming now is the second stage where team members start asserting or trying to, scrambling themselves as they vie for the position. In this stage now, people are trying to scramble for the positions. So that's the stage of storming. And norming is a consensus is reached, and rules and responsibility become clear and accepted. In this stage now, everybody knows where to go, knows what to do, and appreciate the rules and responsibility at the fullest extent. Performing is a higher productive stage. Team intensity exists, and the team is focused on achieving its goals. And also adjourning is an add-on phase for project-specific group purposes. Let me say, people came together for a specific project. After they successfully complete the task, people, they disband and move to other projects. So it is just a temporary sort of a stage. Dealing with conflict. We have 5 styles of conflict resolutions. We have competing, we have accommodating, we have avoiding, collaborating, and of course compromising. In a competing situation is when we're higher on tenseness. People are higher on assertiveness and low on cooperation. These types of individuals often aggressive and feel conflict will never resolve until he or she wins. Accommodating is low on assertiveness, higher on cooperation. Individual neglect his or her own concern and let other win the situation, you know what I mean. And avoiding is low on both assertiveness and cooperation. Individual does not deal with the issue at all, often leads to both parties feeling dissatisfied and conflict now become wider. In this situation, people try to hide conflict, but of course they have this element of feeling that they are not satisfied. So they are, of course, dissatisfied. Collaboration. They are higher on both assertiveness and cooperation. It involves one open communication, questioning, and resolution. Compromising is a moderate or average on both assertiveness and cooperation. Resolution only partially satisfies both parties, but it's often temporary solution for the conflict. So it's not really advanceable stage in a compromising because it's temporarily solving of conflict, but we would like a permanent solve of conflict, but we know it's not easy. Self-reading and study. Read on page 122, 127 about ethics and professionalism in business, ethics in accounting. Questions. Ask questions where you don't understand. My email is abna. I'm is to your Twitter, abna@gmail.com, or call 08133064443. Last but not least, we are at our last module, which is module 5, working with numbers and an introduction of a number. Our number system. According to the Oxford Dictionary of Mathematics, a number system is made up of a set of defined symbols, the number they represent, and the rules of forming large or smaller number from those symbols. Place value. A place value is a position of a digit within a number that determines the value of it. Example here, we have 726 and 2018. In the number 726, the number 2 refers to 2, which is in 20 position, whereas 2 in 2018, it refers to 2000. You must take note that we move from left to right. Place value increased by a multiple of 10. When you're in a number line, it's look like now. Imagine about number line now. We move from right to left, and the place value is increased by the multiple of 10. Talking about numbers, the whole numbers, we have 0, 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That we can use to count. These are called whole numbers. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I used to count. We call them whole numbers. Even numbers. The even numbers are whole numbers divisible by 2 without a remainder. Take note of this. These are even numbers. All numbers that are divisible by 2, you can divide them by 2 without a remainder. An example here, we have 2, 4, 6, and 8. These are the even numbers. And take note that the whole numbers form the basis of all other numbers, such as decimals and fractions. All the numbers, whole numbers, let me say decimal and fractions are a subset of whole numbers, let me say. Negative number, any number below the freezing point of water, which is 0 degrees Celsius, and any temperature below 0 degrees Celsius is given a negative number. Integers, number that can be written without a fraction of decimal component, can be positive or a negative. So meaning that an integer can be a positive number or a negative number. We have example of 1, 2, 3, or -1, -2, -3, and the list goes on. Looking at greater than and less than. -1 is less than 1. So a -1 is less than 1, which is obviously right. -8 is less than -7, This is quite complicated. You think now it's 7 and 8. Why 8 is less than 7? Because we have negatives. And on a number end, any number comes first before the other one. From negative point of view, any number which comes first before the next number is greater than the next number. A -1 is greater than a -2. A -2 is greater than a -3. A -3 is greater than a -4, and so on and so forth. That's why I say a -7 is greater than a -8, or vice versa, which is a -8 is less than -9, and so on and so forth. We're looking about how can you differentiate about less than and negative. Less than a negative. Let me say a less than sign. It's always, a greater than sign is always like, wherever there's a big space, it can be a 6, is greater than 4. Wherever there's when it's open, it's where the big side is. And wherever it's pointing, it's a shortest way, like here, is the smallest side of. Is this a less than, this a greater than. Wherever it's opened, this is a greater than symbol sign, and here is a less than symbol sign. Addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. These are the simplest way. I understand everybody knows this, ladies and gentlemen. Looking at 700 plus 320 plus 172 is equal to 1192. I understand that there's nobody with a problem on additions and multiplications and division also. So you can go through that, and guys, you can call me back if you have a problem with divisions, multiplications, and also addition. Rules of negative numbers. This is very important as far as negative number addition is concerned, negative number multiplication and addition is concerned. We are talking about when adding negative number when adding negative number is the same. When adding negative number is the same as subtracting positive numbers. So adding negative number is the same as subtracting a positive number. This is very important, guys, and you have to take note of this. It's very important. It's saying that adding negative numbers is the same as subtracting positive numbers. So we have to emphasize on this every time, and then it's very, very helpful when it comes to operating like negative and positives. Subtracting a negative number is the same as adding a positive number. Subtracting a positive number and subtracting a negative number is exactly the same as adding positive number. Multiplication and division, if the signs are different, the answer is positive, you know what I mean? If the sign, when you are dealing with negative numbers and the signs are different, there's always a positive, there's always a negative answer in that solution when you're doing your calculation in your computations. If the signs are the same, there's always a negative, there's always a positive answer. If the signs are the same, the answer is positive, and if the signs are different, the answer are negative. Look at the averages. There's a scenario that I have done. A student score the following marks for the 5 tests during a semester. Test scores are equal weights, We have test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, and test 5. Those are 5 tests. When you are looking at average, you must look at the count also. We have 5 tests. 1 test, you get 100%, 100 out of 100. Test 2, you get 80%. Test 3, you get 6%. Test 4, you get 51%. And of course, test 5, he gets 79%. Now, if you want to find the average of this computation, you have to take all the tests, test 1 to test 5, add them together, and divide them the number of count. Okay, we have 5 tests. We have 100 plus 80 plus 60 plus 51 and plus 79 divided by 5. Why 5? Because he wrote 5 tests. And he gets 74%, which is a student year mark. And now we are assuming that the student year count 50% toward final mark and scored 84% in final exam. What will be the student's final mark? We have 2 scenarios here. This 50% and 84. There are 2 counts here. So the solution is 84. It's 84 plus 74, which is equal to 158 divided by 2. Why 2? There's a 50 and 84. These are the 2 scenarios, these are 2 counts, and it's equal to 79 distinction student final mark. Power and roots. Power, it's a quick, define the word power. One can define the word power for me, please? Okay, let me take it. Power is a quick way to represent some number that multiply itself for several times. Example is 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, which is a 2 to power of 4. We read it as 2 to the power of 4. The power is also called index or exponent. Take note of that. I can say it's a 2 to the index of 4. Or I can say it's a 2 to exponent of 4. Or I can say it's a 2 to power 4. All those things are the same song, are the same poem. Root. A root is the opposite of power. Is the opposite of power. If you are to find the number rise to the power of 2, or number to the exponent of 2, or the number to the index of 2 to give us 36, we will arrive at 6. Look at the square root of 2. A square root of 2, we are talking about the square root of 2. Here we are talking about a number that give us a number is a number to the power of something. Okay, it's a number to the power of 2 to give us, so 36. So where we come to that is 2 to the power of 6. Give it 36. Are we right? Definitely yes. We are right there. I also want to recommend you to do a reading on page 174 to the binary and decimal system. Revert back to me for the questions if necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I would love to see you next time. Always be in touch. Contact me at 081 3306 443 or drop me an email at your tutor, abna@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure and privilege to have this class with you. Any question? Call me at that number. Drop me an email to that email address. Thank you very much.